Hey guys, Jay Bear here with you. Wolves Den. We're going to low budget it this week because we got a lot going on with our set and it's just not ready yet. So here, hopefully in the next week or two, we can kind of get back to a normal look. But there was a lot to get to here in the new year, so I wanted to get something out here for you guys. So again, we're going real low budget this week, but that's okay. So we'll try to make this kind of quick for you guys here. Obviously, the big news, it's basketball season, but on Wednesday, Arkansas State football team had them a little press conference and announcing a lot of things. In fact, there's, I don't want to say wholesale changes, but there's been a few changes. Hiring 4 new coaches, one of which the strength coach, Jake Miller, coming from SMU. He was actually with the team a couple of years ago when they had Coach Kaz there as the strength coach. So something that Blake Anderson alluded to, keeping it in the family there with him. So seemed to get a lot of positive responses from him. So we'll see kind of what he brings to the table, puts his own spin on things here as the strength and conditioning coach here. But that was one that kind of leaked out first. But the big ones here, some changes to the offensive staff. 3 guys gone. Buster Faulkner, Alan Rudolph, and Coach Buckner are on the outs. And they have been replaced with new offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach Keith Heckendorf. Malcolm Kelly will be the outside receivers coach, and then Sean Coughlin would be the new offensive line and running game coordinator. So a little bit of a different look here. I know this is some changes that a lot of people have been clamoring for, and especially in kind of some of those positions, and this is exactly what they got. And Blake Anderson alluded to in his press conference, he took a long, hard look, and this was actually over the course of a few months, he said, that he started to realize he needs to make some changes here. In fact, he also said that he was exhausted, and you could really see that at the end of the Arizona Bowl. I got to talk to him after the fact, a little one-on-one, and you just saw it on him. He was just exhausted. He looked burned out, and he stretched himself too thin. In fact, he even said that himself. He was the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and the quarterbacks coach on top of all the other responsibilities that he has as the head coach. And I mean, yeah, you're going to get burned out a little bit. So we saw that, and he said he noticed it a lot in his bowl prep that he just wasn't doing his job as well as he should have been. And I think a lot of us saw that. A lot of us wanted to give him sort of the benefit of the doubt because he's dealing with a lot in life right now. His wife, Wendy, the cancer recurring. Everybody kind of knows that story. You keep up with this team. So so let's get to these guys. Keith Heckendorf, he was his right-hand man, as he said, back at North Carolina when those two worked there together. He worked there for 2 years with him. Should be interesting to see how those two will work together on this thing. In fact, he mentioned that I'm going to turn it loose. He's going to run the offense. He's going to call the plays. He's going to design it. So this is going to be akin to when Walt Bell was the offensive coordinator at Arkansas State, and the sort of the dynamic there with those two. And we noticed that things were pretty explosive in those couple of years. So could this be one of those things where Blake Anderson, he releases some of the responsibilities and things actually get better? We'll have to wait and see. I would imagine that the system is going to look fairly similar to what we saw in those first couple of years with Walt Bell and those guys when they were here. But I would assume that they'll tailor a little bit to some of their personnel because this is going to be a little bit of a different year. Obviously, Justice Hanson graduating, so you got a new quarterback. You might have a different offensive line scheme. It's going to be interesting to see how he kind of works and weaves his strategy into things. Again, they were together for 2 years at North Carolina. I'm just checking my notes here. Also, Sean Coughlin, again, new offensive line coach. He's also going to be the run game coordinator. Has been at Missouri State for 13 years. Excuse me, 13 years. He's been coaching for 18 years. Get my numbers right here. Now, he was an associate head coach also, had a lot of responsibilities, and it'll be interesting too, and I think that might have been part of the reason that Blake brought him over is because he was trying to release some of the responsibilities, and you have to have a guy who's dealt with a lot more responsibilities in order to hand off the reins, so to speak. So I think that was kind of some of the thought process into why Sean Coughlin was brought into things here. But again, 18 years coaching in general, and he's cranked out some talent. He has done the best with what he has to work with. FCS level, it's a lot different. And for those people kind of looking at some of the stats, it's really hard to gauge how well you're doing at the FCS because the talent pool is just so vastly different than it is at FBS. And also, too, they're in that Missouri Valley Conference. You got North Dakota State, South Dakota State, some pretty perennial powerhouses at the FCS level in there. So some of the numbers kind of get skewed. I'm not sure what their schedule was this past year if they had to deal with either of those teams, but it's a pretty big conference in the FCS level. And he's cranked out at least 5 NFL caliber players there. And that's a big deal because, again, FCS level, I mean, a lot of those guys fly under the radar, but if you crank out 1 or 2 in your tenure, you're doing pretty good. This guy's cranked out 5, plus some Canadian Football League guys. So I think that was a lot of what had to do with Blake looking and seeking out Sean Coughlin's talents as well. He's a graduate of Drake, was a GA there a couple years. Was also at Iowa State, spent a couple of years there. So he's kind of run the gamut. He's coached with the big boys. He's been at the FCS level. So there's, you kind of meet in the middle here at the G5 level. And right now, and granted, you have to kind of see what they do when they get in there and get into things. But some of the videos that I've seen of him, he's a tactician when it comes to technique, things like that, and I think that might have been something that was missing from this Arkansas State offensive line. Not that Coach Rudolph did a bad job or anything, but I think, and even Blake Anderson alluded to this, is like there just needed to be a fresh perspective on some things and maybe some different attention to certain details that maybe was slacking in the past, and I think Coughlin brings that here. Malcolm Kelly, who's going to be the outside, best known for his freestyling at the Big 12 title game. I want to say it was 2006 or 2008. I forget which one it was. Guy's got bars. He can kind of bring it. Probably not going to have an open mic for Arkansas State, but he'll be interesting to watch. He was a 2-time All Big 12 wide receiver. He was a second-round NFL draft pick. Was kind of cut short. Had some injuries there, but the last couple of years he's been at Houston under Major Applewhite. That high-flying offense. So I think he's going to be a pretty solid addition to this team. Part of 2 bowl seasons there at Houston. He was an offensive analyst on top of that, so finally kind of getting into some real bona fide coaching. And he's learned from some of the best there was. There at OU, they've got a pedigree of wide receivers there. You get some run in the league, you're going to get coached up pretty well. So I'll be real interested to see what he brings to the table. And really all 3 of these guys seem to fit what Blake Anderson said in wanting to hand off some responsibilities. He wants to put some more trust into his assistant coaches so he can handle the whole big picture aspect of the Arkansas State Red Wolves, more of the camaraderie and morale of the team. Some of the disciplinary things. He wants to focus a little more on the defense, kind of like he said in his when he was first hired. He said he wants his assistant coaches to coach, and he will just sort of oversee things. So I think it'll be interesting to see with that, and especially with Keith Heckendorf, a guy that it was, like I said, his right-hand man at North Carolina when he was the offensive coordinator. I think he'll be able to comfortably release the reins to those guys. So there's some of that for you. So that was some of the big football news. To basketball, though, we got to get back into the swing of things here. Again, since we're a little low budget, we're just going to touch on them a little bit. This team, definitely a Jekyll and Hyde type of vibe to them. In fact, this week ago, got their first road win of the year, 1-6 now on the year, undefeated at home. So that's nice. But this team just really, granted, it's still year 2 of head coach Mike Bellato's tenure there, into year 2, so it's not even been a full 2 years. So still trying to sort of ingrain the culture, ingrain the system, and just kind of trying to stay afloat right now. Ty Cockfield, though, guy's been balling out here, averaging over 20 points a game. He's been the go-to guy, especially when the things sort of slow down offensively for him. He's a guy that can create, not only off the dribble, but the catch and shoot situations like that. He's been a real force, and it's been real nice to see him evolve as a player. I genuinely think he could be a G League type of guy. Maybe you get an opportunity to crack into an NBA roster, see what he can do in that role, maybe put on a little weight, something like that. But the guy's got skills. The guy can shoot lights out, and he's proven that so far this year. It's just going to be interesting to watch this team as they go along here, especially in Sun Belt play. 1-1, split it with the Louisiana schools, winning on the road at Lafayette, losing to Monroe. So it's another tough test here coming up for them in this next week's slate of games. They've got the Alabama twosome to deal with. Now, granted, they're going to be at home for those, but Troy, South Alabama, two of the better teams in the Sun Belt so far, and not just in terms of, they're 2-0 on their conference slates, but they've got pretty good records, and they've been proven pretty formidable so far as the season's gone along. So again, we'll dig a little deeper into them once we kind of get back up and running with everything here. But it's going to be, this is a fun team to watch. It's a lot more fun than they were last year. They've got some more athletes in there at their disposal. So again, once if they don't fall into that trap, I think, of just watching Ty work, I think they're going to be just fine here as the season rolls along here. On the women's side of things, Peyton Martin, Akasha Westbrook, a couple of Arky girls stand up, sort of leading the way for this team. They're similar to the men. They've struggled on the road, 1-5 so far this year. They're not perfect. They're 6-1 at home though. Another tough test for them coming up this week as well for both of them. Both the Alabama schools for them also very tough. I want to say there's only like 2 or 3 losses between Troy and South Alabama on the women's side of things on the road. So it's going to be a really, really tough test for the Arkansas State Red Wolves women's team here as they start to get going into things. 2-0 in conference, though, to start things off. They swept the Louisianas at home this past week. So it's going to be interesting to watch this team. Maybe they started to find their stride. They're a pesky team. Their scoring margin overall throughout the season is actually in the negative. They give up about 3 points more per game than they score. I want to say it's about a 68-71 difference. So they're kind of an enigma. They tend to lock down, though, at times, and they just got to find a run. We've seen that a lot with these Brian Boyer teams. Their teams are usually pretty athletic, but they don't seem to be very consistent. And granted, that's still got to do with a lot of youth that are starting to grow up a little bit, and I think that's why we've seen them sort of eke out some gritty wins as the season's gone on, with sort of some of this core group here. Star Taylor kind of leading the way as their point guard. She's not putting up a lot statistically, but definitely one of the leaders now as a junior on that team, and she is one heck of an athlete. So don't let the numbers fool you. She's definitely defensively really locking things down. So it's going to be interesting to watch that team evolve as well. 7-6 right now. Their record on the year can only get better. Again, 2-0 in Sun Belt play so far. Tough test, though, coming this week at South Alabama, at Troy. So, we will expound. We will expound a little more as we get some of the new set ready here. Again, we're kind of low budgeted today here, but I did want to get that out and let you guys know we ain't gone nowhere. We are still here up in this thing. So we'll get some of our previous guests who are some of the Red Wolf insiders, Red Wolf's Twitter, if you will, and we will definitely get things going here once the new set is complete. Because again, it kind of looks like the old set I used to deal with at Arkansas State when I was there in the RTV department. We didn't have cool monitors like this one though, but we do good work up there. Again, coaching staff there for football, big changes there. Will be fun to watch in spring practice how those guys sort of work into the current staff setup, and we'll see if they can hold on to guys. It's still sort of that season where jobs are open, guys might get reached out to and maybe explore other opportunities, but there's a few guys on there you really hope they don't leave. Brian Early, especially being one of them, Alan Johnson, a couple of those guys on the defensive side of the ball that you really, really hope that you can hold on to. So we'll see what happens with those coaches as we kind of get into sort of the coaching circus as we get into closer to the second signing day here. And again, basketball taking on the Alabamas this week. Men are at home, women on the road. So a couple of tough tests for both of those teams in South Alabama and Troy. As both of those teams are really good for both the men's and women's side for them. So again, we will get back to things here hopefully sooner rather than later, next week or so, I hope. And we will see you guys again next week.